Hey everybody, and welcome back to Fantasyland. My name is Cole Altman, and I'm here with my esteemed father, first-time guest.
You're a fantasy mentor.
Fantasy mentor. You know, it's kind of reminds me of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-Gon Jinn in Star Wars.
Love
I
that
mean,
analogy.
Qui-Gon Jinn was better at the beginning, but after all, Obi-Wan Kenobi did really learn his tactics and did really rise above. So in this situation, I would consider you Qui-Gon Jinn and me Obi-Wan Kenobi. What are your thoughts on that reference?
I think time will tell. That's all I have to say.
Oh, yes. Thank you for being here today.
You're welcome. And I'd like to start out with the most important fantasy football topic of all, kickers. And I just want to say that last year, by the person who just claimed that they're better than me in fantasy now, recommended, and I'm not even going to say his name, I'm just going to put his glasses in front of the camera, and raved about this person. Said this guy was the be-all, end-all. And you know what happened? His Blankenship was sunk. Sunk. So, Rodrigo Blankenship, one of our favorite kickers of all time, gone.
You know, he does have great hair. He does have great glasses. Does have a solid name. Not a great kicker. That was disappointing to see him get cut.
All right, cool. So before we go on, I just have one other thing. I think what a great thing to talk about on the show today would be about a young ho.
Oh, yeah, love young hoes.
No, not young ho.
I know.
You took it to a place.
No, I was referring to Koo.
Young
of course.
Ho Koo as a great kicker. And there is another kicker I'd never heard of until I saw this list now. And I don't know if his last name is pronounced Group or Groupie. Who is Blake Groupie?
He is the kicker of...
Come on.
Is it the Jaguars?
I've never heard of the guy.
No, I have no clue.
He's the starting kicker for the Jaguars?
No, I'm not
Groupie?
sure. Hold on. I have to look this up because I'm sorry, my fantasy knowledge doesn't extend to... Actually, my Chrome is not working. But my fantasy knowledge does not extend to Blake Group. But I did see him on waivers today.
All right, here's the deal, Cole. I want to start out with tight ends, and I want to start out with a hot take on tight ends.
All right.
Okay? Now, everybody, you look at, it's a little unusual this year. There's a lot of hot rookie tight ends. You've got Dalton Kincaid. You've got Sam Laporta. And there's a lot of interest in the young tight ends, okay? And I'm going to start talking about two guys that I think are going way under the radar in tight ends. They're at the bottom of everybody's rankings. They're in that like 20 to 25 tight end range. I think the tight end position's deeper than it's ever been. And there's two guys that I think could immediately emerge to that 10-12 level of tight end. One is Greg Dulcich, and one is Juwan Johnson. And no one's really talking about either of those guys. And I have to just say one thing, and I'll turn it over to you. Juwan Johnson is a former wide receiver. He's got incredible athleticism. He's got a good quarterback now and not that Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill nonsense. So he's got Derek Carr, who's a solid quarterback throwing to him. You've got Chris Olave, who's a stud. Michael Thomas, who knows if he's going to remain healthy. Juwan Johnson could be the second or third weapon in that offense. And Greg Dulcich, let me tell you something. Greg Dulcich, every single thing I read and hear tells me not only could he leap up to the 10-12 range, possibly even get in the top 10 tight ends in fantasy this year.
I mean, last year for a while, Dulcich was in the top 10.
As a rookie.
As a rookie. He was in that discussion with a bad Russell Wilson. Now, got a new coach in Sean Payton. Maybe that offense opens up a little bit. I see Dulcich. I see him as like a mid-range tight end too. But I agree with you. He has that upside to jump into the top 10 eventually. And I've always liked Juwan Johnson. I don't think he's someone...
How long have you liked him?
A long time. Huge fan.
Followed him in college.
Jerseys and jerseys of Juwan Johnson in my room. Juwan Johnson was pretty fantastic last year. Had some huge games. He's a touchdown beast. Like you said, he's super athletic. He's not someone you want as your tight end one right now. You want to have another stable tight end one. But if you can keep him on your bench, he could have some. If you're in a trading league, he could have some later trade value, or he could be a good bye-week filler.
I just think, Cole, when you look at tight ends like Darren Waller or T.J. Hawkinson or Mark Andrews, those high-level tight ends, I think there's enough depth. even the guys like David Njoku, Dallas Goedert, although Goddard's kind of in between that.
Honestly, I like Goddard enough to put him in that Hawkinson
Agreed.
Waller conversation.
Agreed. So not Goddard, but David Njoku I like a lot. And I'm looking at the list right here. Freiermuth I like a lot. Even Tyler Higbee I like this
Evan
year.
Ingram.
Yeah, Evan Ingram I'm a little down on with Calvin Ridley's return. I think that's going to affect him. I just don't know if you're in fantasy auction or even a draft for that matter. I would not spend the extra money on that Hawkinson Goddard level. I would save some money or save a few draft picks. I don't think the drop-off to the Njoku Freiermuth is that much.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if I'm paying $25 for a TJ Hawkinson or a $5 for a Pat Freiermuth, I'm taking that $5 Pat Freiermuth and spending that $20 somewhere else. So I agree with you. I think the 2, 3, 4 tight ends are really not that much better than the 6, 7, 8. Waller has a chance to be a lot better, but as always, if Kelsey's worth it.
And the other thing I would say, one last thing about tight ends I would say is, I know people are hesitant to take players on New England, but I will say this. If you have a stud tight end and you have a space on your bench, don't be shy about stashing either Hunter Henry or Mike Gesicki, because with Bill O'Brien's offense, he's very much designs the offense about tight end. I will not be surprised if either or even both of those guys are relevant fantasy tight ends for bye-week replacements. Gesicki even, I think, has the potential to even get in that 10 to 15 range if everything works out right as well.
I actually would counter that. I think that Hunter Henry is definitely worth a roster spot if you're in a 12, 14, 16-man league. If you're in a 10-man league, you can find some guys better. You can find Sam Laporte.
That's fair.
You can find Laporte on waivers. You can find Luke Musgrave, who we both like.
No, I don't like Luke Musgrave. I love Luke Musgrave.
Okay.
Everybody is sleeping on Luke Musgrave.
Okay.
He was joked about in my auction in New York City yesterday. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to call this on Green Bay. I want to be on record on the Fantasy Football Podcast with Cole Altman. I want to be on record to say that there is only one weapon that will be used more by the end of the season in Green Bay, and that's Christian Watson. He will be the second. By the time the season's out, Luke Musgrave will be targeted legit 6 to 9 times a game.
Okay.
Legit.
There is Jaden Reed, who they took in the 3rd round.
Yeah, whatever about Jaden Reed.
Okay.
I don't care about
I
Jaden
like
Reed.
Musgrave. I think he's a top 20 tight end. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. Okay.
Better than top 20.
You know what?
Heard it here. Greg Dulcich, Luke Musgrave, Jawan Johnson. You heard it here
The
first.
viewers are gone. The viewers are gone. We talked too much about
Are they
Luke Musgrave.
watching or listening to the podcast?
They
or
are
both?
They are both.
Have you ever polled to see how many people actually watch or just listen?
So you can see on YouTube the average watching time.
And what is it?
We have like a 14-minute average watching time.
That's actually pretty good.
Which is good.
How long is the average podcast?
Like 25, 30 minutes.
Okay, that's not bad.
So I want to jump over to quarterbacks real quick, and I want to talk about streaming quarterbacks. That's something you really have to do frequently in most leagues, unless you have stud quarterbacks. And I want to talk about a couple sneaky flyers that you could take. Sam Howell interests me, and Brock Purdy really interests me, especially Brock Purdy. We saw him. He was fantastic until he got hurt. Is there any signs that would change? Because I haven't seen anything that would change him. Maybe that UCL injury sets him back a little bit, but he was fantastic. Could he be the next Tom Brady S-type player? Not as good as him, but similar breakout potential.
Well, let me put it this way. The Niners, for some reason, were reasonably satisfied with Jimmy Garoppolo for a long time. I think Brock Purdy is going to be every bit as good as Jimmy Garoppolo was for starters.
Way better.
But what I'm saying is they were really happy with Jimmy G. I think Brock Purdy, I don't know what his ceiling is right now, but as far as a steady, smart, poised quarterback, I think he showed so much in his rookie year. So I think Brock Purdy is legit. I think the thing about streaming quarterbacks that very few people do in fantasy, Cole, and I did it for the first time in my career. I've been doing fantasy for literally almost 25 years now, actually closer to 30 years, and I had never done this until yesterday. And what I did is there's a couple of websites where you can see combos of quarterbacks that you can stream all season. And my partner and I did a little study, and we found out, and we executed this in our auction. We took Dak Prescott and Daniel Jones for $4 each. So we spent $8 on quarterbacks instead of getting a Herbert or a Burrow or a Josh Allen. And we found out statistically, just as an example, that those guys, if you stream Prescott and and Daniel Jones the right weeks and alternate them, they're literally within a point and a half of Herbert and Burrow. And we saved a whole bunch of money.
And that brings me back to the point I was making. We were on vacation in New Hampshire, and we were talking about the difference between guys like Burrow. Herbert is an exception because I think Herbert has top 4 or 5 upside.
Me too.
But guys like Burrow, difference between guys like Burrow and guys like Tua and guys like Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins and stuff like that. And I really don't think the difference is as vast as people make it out to be. Their floor is about the same. Joe Burrow's floor is...
Well, if the streaming happens or just in general, period?
I think in general, period. I mean, Joe Burrow's floor, probably 17, 18 points. What's Kirk Cousins? If they're not playing on prime time, his floor is probably 15, 16 points, so that's really close. And Kirk Cousins puts up some big games with Jefferson.
I think Kirk Cousins takes a step back this year.
I think that's a horrible take. Why would you say that?
I would say that because I think Alexander Madison is a very average, matter-of-fact running back, and I think they're going to miss Dalvin Cook, and I think they're underestimating the loss of a consistent running game and how that's going to affect that offense.
I mean, you drafted Jordan Love. You signed Hawkins into the biggest tight end deal of all time. They're seriously...
draft Jordan Love.
Or Jordan Addison, thank you. They're committing to... they're committing to the pass game, and they seriously trust Kirk Cousins. I would counter that with I think Kirk Cousins takes a leap forward this year. I'm big on Kirk Cousins.
Well, but if you play the Vikings, if you got to respect the run, otherwise you're going to play back in coverage. That's my point. I don't know if it's as seamless as it's been in the past.
Playing back in coverage is not an option. There's too many guys there. If you have KJ
they have
Osborne
a ton of,
as your
weapons.
5th weapon,
who's the 4th?
Madison into the backfield.
Oh, well.
Madison catches passes.
I'll tell you, the thing that really upsets me about your point about Joe Burrow is that he doesn't spell his name Geaux like he did at LSU.
I agree. I think that's pretty concerning.
I mean, he's a Cajun at LSU. He should keep the name spelled like that.
I think we should all fade him because he's not spelling his name like that.
I agree.
I just wanted to circle over to last quarterback I have on my list. If you have anything about quarterbacks, we can come back. But Aaron Rodgers, currently being drafted at an ADP as the QB 16, which is considered a back-end QB 2. I think he has a better offense than he did in Green Bay. He could end up being a game manager, and I really didn't like Rodgers until about a week or two ago. I did some more research. Rodgers was QB 14 in fantasy last year, so I think that he may be being undervalued a little bit. Do you see him having that top 12 upside?
Not only do I think he's undervalued, not only do I see him having the top 12 upside, as much as I hate Aaron Rodgers, the lack of respect that is being given to him is absolutely absurd, and I'll tell you why. Tom Brady, when he went to Tampa Bay that first year, had a total reinvigoration and resurgence in his career. He was finally surrounded by weapons and top caliber players that he hadn't been for New England, and he totally kind of just re-engaged. I think the exact same thing is going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. The last couple of years, I don't think Aaron Rodgers was all that invested in the success of the team. I'm not saying he mailed it in, but I think he lost a little bit of his passion for the game. He's coming to New York City, bright lights. Aaron Rodgers is all about the spotlight. He always has to be the center of attention. And now he's got Garrett Wilson. And see, this is the thing about a guy like Alan Lazard. I don't like Alan Lazard that much, but he's not in a critical position where you have to depend on him.
He's not the number one option
Not
anymore.
the number one. So now Garrett Wilson's the guy. You've got 2 dynamic running backs in Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall. Even look, C.J. Uzoma and Ty Conklin, they're not good for fantasy, but they're functional for offense.
100%.
And so I just feel like the Jets are surrounding him with more talent than he's been around in a long time. And, part of why I think Aaron Rodgers took a step back is losing Devontae Adams. I don't know that he ever recovered from that. That was his guy. And now he's got a guy like Garrett Wilson. I think Aaron Rodgers, I think the point you made is a critical one. I think Aaron Rodgers has that upside, but the Jets' defense is very good. They're going to be in a lot of close games in that division. There will be some game management. They're going to want to run the ball more to protect him.
They are 100%. I could see him being like a glorified game manager. He's just gonna take care of the ball a lot of the times.
But even with that said, I will not be surprised if Aaron Rodgers finishes as high as maybe the 9th best quarterback. I could see, and I think anywhere from like 9 to 15, but 9th I could see is possible.
I wouldn't be shocked if he beat out guys like Deshaun Watson. I
Or
think
Dak Prescott.
I think him and Dak are about the same in fantasy.
Well, could be.
I think right now, if I had Aaron Rodgers on my team, or if I had Dak on my team, and someone offered me Aaron Rodgers, we're really close to a trade.
Actually, I'm looking at the list, and I take that back. He's not going to be better than Trevor Lawrence, who I see as 8th. And then the next group is Tua, Dak, and Deshaun Watson. And so I could see him being in the mix with any go. So I don't know. 9-10 is the upside, I think, for Aaron Rodgers this year.
All right.
Yeah.
I have one more guy.
Okay.
One more guy at QB, and then we can move on.
Okay.
Daniel Jones. Big rushing upside. Got Darren Waller, an elite target over the season. I know you think he has brick hands, which he kind of does.
And he gets hurt all the time.
He does. If he can stay healthy, what's Daniel Jones' ceiling? QB7, QB8? I mean, he ended as QB9 last year. Why can't he be better than that last year?
No, I think the same.
At
I
least.
think the same thing. He could be in the mix with the Dak, Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers. Look, here's the thing about Daniel Jones. I'm actually a big fan of his. The only thing that concerns me about him is, look, I even like Jalen Hyatt, the rookie receiver, to
Love
stretch
him.
the field.
Love him.
So, like, between Waller and Hyatt, instead of the no-name, the Giants receivers the last few years, due to injury, made the Patriots receivers look good. That's how the Richie James and Isaiah Hodgins garbage. But I just think Daniel Jones still has something to prove. He doesn't have great accuracy when he throws. He's like a poor man's Justin Fields. You know what I mean? Where Justin Fields doesn't have that great accuracy either, but he relies on the run. So
Daniel Jones is a better thrower than Justin Fields is. I think
maybe.
as a real-life quarterback, Daniel Jones might be a better quarterback than Justin
Well, we're
Fields
going to
right now.
We're going to find out this year, won't we? Because Daniel Jones hasn't really had real targets to throw to. So we'll find out.
And I honestly, would you be shocked if he ended in front of Trevor Lawrence?
Stunned. There's
Really?
no way.
Why? Because Trevor Lawrence, the thing with Trevor Lawrence
No
for me,
way.
Trevor Lawrence, love him, no rushing upside. That's the problem.
I know, but I just feel like Daniel Jones has the capacity to get to 9 or 10 again. I don't see him eclipsing higher than that. I think that's a little wishful thinking, especially with Saquon Barkley being such a key cog in that offense.
He was a key cog last year. He was elite last year.
I think Daniel Jones, listen, I have him in a league. I'm hoping you're right, but I don't see higher than 9, no.
I would. I mean, I have him on my rankings. I think 12. I like him to end as a borderline top 10 QB.
The quarterback I want to bring up, one last thing is, and you know I'm a big fan of, is Kenny Pickett.
Yep.
And I think Kenny Pickett, I mean, just, you know, no one's, like, look, again, just like I said with Ty Conklin and the CJ Uzoma, Allen Robinson, not a guy I want on my fantasy team, but he's still a solid receiver for the Steelers. You've got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth. You have Najee and Jalen Warren. A lot of guys there in Pittsburgh. Their offensive line's been beefed up big time. Kenny Pickett, fantasy-wise, what's the upside for Kenny Pickett? You know, I don't know. Like, I look at the list. I mean, I think Kenny Pickett maybe has the upside to be, 13, 14, 15. Maybe.
I love Kenny Pickett. And I
Maybe.
have Kenny Pickett. QB 13 would be astonishing.
I agree.
for
Not
me.
13, maybe 15, 16. But anyway, I think Kenny Pickett's going to be a steady performer, and he's a guy that, depending on how many quarterbacks you start in your league, if you have 2 quarterbacks, maybe at least have on your reserve. But I like Kenny Pickett a lot.
If you can have him as your QB 3, I think that's good.
If he's your QB3, that's outstanding.
That
to
is
me.
outstanding.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in like a 10-man league. I'm in an 8-man league. I have him as my QB 3. I'm happy with that. I'm not super happy with it, but if you're in a 10 to 12-man league and you have Kenny Pickett as your 3, that's fantastic.
I also have a comment about Kyler Murray for those of you who are putting him on your bench, hoping he returns. The Arizona Cardinals over/under for wins this year is 3.5.
Yeah, that's
Which tells me, not that that's news. We all know they're going to be terrible, but Arizona wants to position themselves to get the number 1 quarterback coming out, Caleb Williams, next year.
he's aight.
And you know something? If you have Kyler Murray and you're counting on him, I wouldn't. Because even if Kyler Murray comes back on week 4 and week 5, once Arizona's out of it, they don't want to win games. They want to tank. So if you have high hopes for Kyler Murray to come back, I would temper them because you're not going to get much from him.
Okay. I want to move on to running back. I only have a couple.
One running back or the running back category?
Running back, parentheses, S, parentheses, close.
Okay.
I just have a couple. First, I want to mention Cam Akers.
Horrendous.
He's not.
Horrendous.
He's heading into a contract year. They're going to drive him into the ground. Why wouldn't they drive him into the ground? They're worried about Matt Stafford's pass game. They really don't have any weapons besides Kupp and Higbee, and Henderson's gone. Kyron Williams is the next guy that's competing for carries, who you loved. He sucks. Cam Akers is going to get 15 to 20 touches a game, if not more, with receiving. Cam Akers is an RB2. Why am I wrong?
Let me say a couple of things. First of all, the Rams and Buccaneers are a cautionary tale for teams that go all in for the Super Bowl and now are a disaster. Both teams look horrible.
Well, it was worth it. They won a Super Bowl.
I agree, but how long they'll take because they're so messed up from the salary cap, how many years? So that's fair. They won. Here's the thing. To me, the Rams' offense is so horrible. Like after Cooper Kupp, you've got Van Jefferson, your Cam Akers, who Sean McVay can't stand so much. He tried to find anybody last year who could replace Cam Akers. I mean, he gave Darrell Henderson and Kyron Williams. He was looking on waivers because Cam Akers is an attitude problem. He thinks he's better than he is. And I'm going to tell you right now, if Cam Akers has a few bad games this year, I don't think Sean McVay sticks with him. I don't think Sean McVay likes him.
Sean McVay, on the contrary, already said they want to use him heavily.
What else is he going to say? He's the only guy they have.
And two,
it's like
I want you to guess in the last 8, maybe it was 7, last 7 games of the season last year, what number running back he was.
For the last 7 games?
Don't give a stupid answer.
All right, I got to change it then. 19.
6.
Oh, my God. He was
horrible. RB6
Horrible.
in fantasy points per game. There's no reason
Nobody paid attention to the Rams.
Why he can't be an RB2. I won't hear anything different. I don't even
know if he can be an RB6.
Okay. All right.
I don't even know if he can.
Kyron
Williams.
Cam Akers is a great RB3, low-end to mid-range RB2, but he has the upside to be way more.
You know who I like more than Cam Akers?
Who?
Former Eagles kicker David Akers.
Okay.
Like I would actually maybe take him at running back before I took Cam.
All right, your turn. I can't handle Cam Akers talk anymore.
Okay. All right. I do want to talk about a couple of running backs. First of all, I want to talk about Jonathan Taylor. And this is what I want to say. I think people, when you're drafting or in an auction Jonathan Taylor, you have to adjust. If Jonathan Taylor was healthy, everything was normal, how much does he go for in an auction? What do you think he goes? If everything was normal.
If everything was normal,
Yep.
the team was happy,
Yep.
$45.
Okay. So that seems a little high, but let's say you're right.
Why not?
Okay. Well, it depends how many auction dollars you have and stuff.
Yeah, that's fine.
But let's say $30-$40 just to be safe, okay? So if you're thinking about drafting or buying Jonathan Taylor, he's unhappy. So now you say, well, I don't want that headache on my team. I think that's the wrong approach. Jonathan Taylor could still get traded at any point. That is not off the table. And do I think Jonathan Taylor comes back? Maybe, but here's my point. If you were going to pay, and in the auction I did yesterday in New York City, he went for $8. If you pay $8, $9, $10 for a player in a fantasy auction, what's your expectation of that player? For an $8, $9, $10 player, for real?
It's low, but I want to mention something. The first 4 weeks of the season are often the most important weeks of the season for your team.
Okay.
It makes or breaks your team.
True.
You find out which players are good,
True.
which players are busts. And Jonathan Taylor's gone for the first 4 weeks. True. I don't want him on my team.
True, but I'm saying that if you have an $8, $9, $10 player, even if Jonathan Taylor didn't return till week 8, would he not be a steal for the final 9 weeks of the season at $8, $9, $10?
I mean, it depends how much auction money did you start with in that league?
200.
So you're asking me if I want to spend
1/20th.
less than an average. So how many roster spots? Probably 16, 17?
No, 20.
So you're asking me to spend the price of one roster spot?
Yep. And let me take it a step further before you answer. How about this? Think of it this way. Let's say you had a player like, let's say Joe Mixon, for the sake of argument. And you knew Joe Mixon was out for the first 8 weeks of the season, but he was definitely going to return. It wasn't knee or something. It was 8 weeks. How much would you pay for him in the auction?
That's a good point.
Right. So this is what I think people miss the boat. You have to know everything has a cost. I'm not saying you should blindly believe Jonathan Taylor is going to come back. I'm saying that anytime you spend $8, $9, or $10 on a player, there's an element of risk. The question is, how much upside is there? And that's why I think people are missing on Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
And even Alvin Kamara to an extent.
No. Alvin Kamara has seen drops in production for the last 2 years. That's different. Jonathan Taylor, last year...
Come on, that Saints offense last year was a disaster.
It doesn't matter. Kamara is still not as good as he used to be. He's not in his prime anymore. Kamara, don't get me wrong, when he comes back, he'll probably be an RB2.
It's your bubby.
Kamara is my bubby.
I think there should be a rule in fantasy that any year where you play with Andy Dalton as quarterback should be expunged from your records.
I agree. But, I mean, I like Alvin Kamara. I think when he comes back, he could be probably a solid RB2. But I'm not a fan of holding guys on my roster for the first 3 weeks. I'm a win now type of guy.
Okay, no, but I think your point about the first 4 weeks being critical is a good point. It's just a risk reward, right?
It is.
It depends what you can afford.
So I have one running back before you bring up your next.
Okay.
I want to bring up Dalvin Cook and David Montgomery.
Okay.
So both are likely eventually to be. David Montgomery may start as the primary running back on the Lions. Week 1, if they use him more than Jahmyr Gibbs, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he's a veteran. He's probably teaching Jahmyr Gibbs some things, and same things with Cook. Cook is going to start as the primary running back because Breece Hall is coming off an injury. So those two guys out of the gate may provide some great fantasy value.
Well, I'm going to say right now, first of all, I would never, ever advise someone to take a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs when a guy like David Montgomery is there, because the Lions think they can win this year. They're in the playoffs. I mean, obviously for how much you'd have to pay or draft Jahmyr Gibbs. To me, when you've got a split situation going into the season, a proven veteran running back like David Montgomery, the Lions, who are absolutely in win now mode, they have to make the playoffs. The Lions haven't made the playoffs in so many years. So do you think as this season wears on, who's going to be the more trustworthy back?
Jahmyr Gibbs.
Well, Jahmyr Gibbs will maybe be the more talented back, but who is the more trustworthy back with the ball in big situations near the goal line? So I'm just saying that I don't really want either. See, I know on one of your teams you have both.
I do,
which I love because you're covered if one starts to emerge more than the other. But if you only have one of the two, I hate that situation for you.
So
hate it.
So on my last podcast with Alex Carpenter,
which is not as good as having me on, but okay.
Well, Alex,
we love Alex.
I mentioned that my two fantasy ride or dies this year are Najee Harris and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Did you make up that term, ride or die?
I did not.
Okay, I've never heard that. I do like it.
Ride or die.
Yeah, ride or die.
You've never heard that term?
No.
So yeah, they're
not hip with the youngsters.
No, not hip with the youngsters. Now you are.
I am.
Yeah, I mean they're the two guys I expect to have the most surprising years. I talked about Najee. I think he has the potential to be a top 10 back. And make sure to go read my blog that is going to be coming out tomorrow afternoon.
Can't stand Najee.
I don't care. Jahmyr Gibbs also has the upside to be a top 10 back. And if you have him in a dynasty league, if he next year, top 5 back. Top 5
But
back.
I don't debate he has the upside. My problem is if you're going to invest a high draft pick or a lot of money in a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs, you're taking a pretty big risk because he has the upside, but he also could be splitting with David Montgomery. We don't know how the touchdowns are going to break out. It's a little bit of a risk. And by the way, the Lions have a lot of mouths to feed, especially when Jameson Williams comes back. You've got Sam Laporta. You've got Josh Reynolds, who is not a good fantasy
Sam
receiver.
Laporta. Did you just mention him in the same conversation as Jahmyr Gibbs?
Sam Laporta is going to be their number 2 receiving weapon to start the season. Who else is it going to be after
Jahmyr
Jamal
Gibbs.
Brown?
Have you Have you watched highlights of Jahmyr Gibbs?
I know Jahmyr Gibbs is really good, but why did they bring in David Montgomery then?
I'm sorry.
Why did they bring in David Montgomery?
They brought in Montgomery after they drafted Gibbs, correct?
That's even more worrisome.
No, it's not. They're looking for a veteran presence. Then, okay, fine. Let's make an example. Why did the Patriots sign Ezekiel Elliott?
Because they only had one running back on their roster.
No,
that is why.
No, the Lions had DeAndre Swift. Let me make another example.
We saw DeAndre Swift on Hard Knocks. We know why he's gone.
Why did the Jets
DeAndre Swift is still running to the sidelines away from getting hit.
Why did the Jets sign Dalvin Cook?
I think DeAndre Swift's named that way because he swiftly runs out of bounds.
Why did the Falcons re-sign Cordarrelle Patterson? See, all these guys.
Cordarrelle Patterson's not taking touches away from Bijan
I know.
Robinson. Tyler Allgeier's taking touches away from Bijan Robinson.
I know. I'm not arguing that. But I'm just saying, you want a guy like Montgomery. You want a guy
So
like
you won't
Cordarrelle
acknowledge
Patterson.
that there's an element of risk with Jahmyr Gibbs? You're arguing with me on that? You don't think there's a risk there?
I would argue that there's minimal risk compared to the extreme upside that Jahmyr Gibbs has.
Well, I'll tell you, he's the only one to me in that list of top-tier running backs that has that kind of risk. He's the only one. Who else?
I mean, Etienne has the risk.
No,
He has huge risk.
Can I just tell you?
He was so inconsistent last season.
I am so sick and tired of hearing that.
I'm out on Travis Etienne.
Tank Bigsby. What?
I've been out on Travis Etienne for weeks.
How come you didn't trade him to me then?
Because he was the only running back left, and he still has trade value.
Oh, listen, I'm a huge fan. We need to tank the Tank Bigsby,
He's going to
hoopla.
be. Tank Bigsby is literally a tank. He's going to get all the goal line touches.
After he fumbled in the last exhibition game?
One fumble, really?
Rookies, this is what you're not getting. Rookies that fumble, you know what happens to rookies. The coaches lose trust. And on teams like Jacksonville and Detroit that are expected to make the playoffs, you wait.
Yeah, maybe Etienne will prove me wrong. Not as big as fan at all.
All right, I just want to say couple last comments about running backs. I have a couple of people to comment on. Number one, I want to talk about Tony Pollard for 1 minute. I think Tony Pollard's overrated, and I'm going to tell you why.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you why.
What a take.
I'm going to tell you why. And I have him. I'll tell you why. Because I don't think he's going to last. I don't think he can do the workload.
His ADP right now is RB5. Do you think that's too high?
I think that he could hit RB5, but I think there's risk, and I think people are like, so Tony Pollard, Zeke's gone. He's going to get all that. He's got to stay healthy. He never stays healthy. Deuce Vaughn, good backup. Similar kind of player, actually.
It is. Yeah, really similar.
So I like Tony Pollard, but I think there's more risk than people are realizing there, and they're taking that for granted.
Well, let's not forget, he's coming off a broken leg, which occurred in the playoffs.
That's right.
So he's probably fully healed, but he may not be fully healed. So that's important to note.
Yep. And then the only other running back comment I want to make is I want to talk about Ramondre Stevenson. People talk about, Zeke's here, he's going to take the goal line touches. This is why I'm not scared of Travis Etienne either. Yeah, you look at Tank Bigsby and Zeke, will they get the goal line touchdowns? They may. But Travis Etienne is a dynamic offensive player. Ramondre Stevenson is a dynamic offensive player. In the Patriots' case, at least Jacksonville has a ton of dynamic offensive players. Who else do the Patriots have that are dynamic? So for those of you who are like, I don't know about Ramondre is going to be on the field a ton. There'll be a lot of two-back sets. And if you're worried about Zeke or Ramondre losing a few goal line touchdowns, you may be right. But the amount of points from Ramondre, he's going to make up for it with his receptions and his all-around game. He's a stud.
So Fantasy Pros has Ramondre at RB10. In my personal rankings, I have him at RB15. Ramondre started my season, believe it or not, at RB5 for me. I was so excited about him. I thought he was going to be so great.
I think he's 10.
And he has dropped down the rankings for me. He's dropped 10 spots from an elite top 5 running back to a mid-range RB2.
Why? Because of Zeke?
Yeah.
No,
yes.
I think he's 10. I think 10 is where it ends up being.
Well, we'll see. But Bill O'Brien came in. He likes to pass the ball. We're going to see how it lands. But not the biggest Ramondre fan right now. Maybe he proves me wrong, but Zeke Elliott signed a 1-year deal, so if you have him in a dynasty league, that could be a good save.
All right, so should we finish with wide receivers?
Let's finish up with the wide receivers.
All right, I want to talk about a guy that's always been a favorite of mine that I also think is going under the radar in fantasy, and I'll explain why. His name is Courtland Sutton.
Oh,
and here's why. So I read a big article about Courtland Sutton. I heard a guy on the Denver Post on the radio yesterday.
Oh, Denver Post. That's not unbiased at all. Or it's not biased at all.
He's the beat writer. He covers the team. What does he have to gain by saying things that aren't true? So this is the thing about Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton, the first 4 weeks of the season, is going to have the best opportunities have. He said he's changed his diet in the offseason. He's in much better shape than he's been. He's going to get a great opportunity in that Sean Payton offense. In the beginning, until Jerry Jeudy comes back, who else do they have besides Dulcich and Sutton? That's all they have in the passing game.
2019, injured. 2020, good for a few weeks, injured. 2021, bad. 2021, ass. 2023, ass.
You said 2021 twice.
2021,
you
ass. He's ass all these years.
Okay, I am saying that I think Courtland Sutton turns into an absolutely consistent wide receiver 3 with potential upside to get low too.
Give me a break with that.
Yeah.
Once Judy comes back, by the way, projected to miss 2 weeks.
Hamstring, we'll see.
Projected to miss 2 weeks.
We'll see.
Judy, when he comes back, that brings me into Jerry
Judy's
Judy.
a slot receiver. It doesn't interfere with
Jerry
Cortland
Judy, call me crazy, top 15 upside.
Sutton. I love Judy.
He over down the stretch. Actually, I'm sorry. I mixed it up. When we were talking about Cam
You wanted
Akers.
to put Sutton as a top 15 receiver?
Nope. Cam Akers over the last 7 games was RB4. Jerry Judy was wide receiver 6. That's what I mixed up.
I am so
Cam Akers,
appalled that you like Cam Akers.
RB4. Yeah, I that makes me like him even more. Jerry Judy, so high upside, big boom games. Give me
Listen,
Jerry Judy.
Cortland Sutton certainly could get hurt, but if he's healthy, he's going to get tons of opportunities. There's no one else there.
Would you like me to rattle off the ass again?
No. And I have one other receiver to mention that I would like to make a point on besides Cortland Sutton, and that is one Marquise Brown. Now, obviously, Arizona has you and I playing quarterback this year, so obviously the concern is who's going to get him the ball. But Marquise Brown, when Kyler Murray was out last year, was actually pretty effective. And I feel like Marquise Brown, I think getting 12 to 14 points a week, like the 6 for 80 or 5 for 75, an occasional touchdown, I actually think he's going to be consistent. The only two Rondell Moore's okay, but the only really offensive weapons they have are Marquise Brown and James Conner.
Okay, 6 for 80, averaging 70. Okay, let's say he averages 70 yards a game in your mind.
13, 14, isn't that? That's not a first starting receiver.
That's a over 1,000-yard season for Marquise Brown. Do you see that happening with Joshua Dobbs or Clayton Tune at quarterback?
So just to be clear, if he averaged 60 yards a week, that would be close to 1,000 yards receiving.
It would.
I do see that. I do.
See, the problem with Marquise Brown for me
I do.
is the Arizona offense is built around dump offs and short plays, and that's what Marquise Brown is built off of too. That's what he did in Baltimore, and so I the 6 for 80 for Marquise Brown doesn't interest me. What interests me for Marquise Brown is the 8 for 60 or the 7 for 40 or these short PPR friendly games.
Still the same points though.
It is, but the problem with that is if they are getting absolutely torched, they're going to fold in the game and they're just going to run the ball. So I don't.
Why would they do that? If Arizona's going to be behind so much, they'd always be throwing the ball. Wouldn't be running. It's the opposite. Think about that. It's the opposite. That's my point. They're going to be behind. They stink.
No. Let me rephrase. They're going to be throwing the ball down the field. So they're not going to be looking at Marquise
They're just
Brown.
going to try to move the ball.
Marquise Brown isn't a deep ball receiver.
No, I'm not saying he is, but I think they're going to be behind a lot, and he's going to be in opportunities to get garbage points.
So Marquise Brown is going as the wide receiver 26 on ADP right now.
I'm looking at the list.
Where do you see him landing? Do you see him being better or worse than Drake London?
That's an interesting comparison.
Because
is Drake London 25? Is that what you're
Drake
saying?
London is 23. I have him as 25.
I mean, if I was taking one of the two, I would take Drake London just because of the upside.
Yeah,
Marquise Brown doesn't have much upside.
Drake London is a touchdown machine. He's built like a tight end.
We'll see about Desmond Ridder. We'll see.
I mean, he did it with what's his name last year? Who was the quarterback last year?
Desmond Ridder.
No, before him. Oh, Mariota. Oh God.
I have a critical question as a final thing for you, and then
what's
obviously
up?
anything else you have. Did you see Christian Kirksey signed with the Buffalo Bills as a veteran linebacker? You know why I'm asking?
Why?
Because can you imagine if Christian Kirksey played on the same team, how confusing that would be?
That would be pretty confusing. I got to be honest. Now settle down.
And what if Kirk, when he was growing up, people as a nickname called him Kirksey? Hey, Kirksey. Think how confusing that would be.
I don't think they called him Kirksey.
Why not? That would be an understandable nickname for Christian Kirk.
I think you need to settle down.
Did they ever call you Colsey?
They don't.
They call you Alts?
They call me Alty.
Alty? See, there you go.
No, but Kirksey is like a female name.
That's a curtsy.
Okay.
That's like a curtsy in a play.
Settle down.
Let's take a look-see.
All right. I want to bring up, I already brought up, oh no, I haven't brought up any of my receivers yet.
Okay.
So Cooper Kupp, he was projected to go as the wide receiver 4. I had him as my wide receiver 4. I think he was pretty much consensus wide receiver 3 or 4 everywhere. Tyreek Hill and Cooper Kupp interchangeable. He has dropped down all the way to 6 on Fantasy Pros, dropped all the way down to 9 on my rankings. He makes me a little nervous. While saying that, if you can buy him low, absolutely do it. Tell the story about your auction, please.
Well, I'll tell you the brief story, and then I've got a point to make that I think you'll appreciate. One is that, so in this national auction I did yesterday, 12-team league, the first auction that completed before we started, I saw a cup went for $24, which was almost, like a third off.
That's pennies for him.
Right. And so I was stunned. So I said to my partner, we got to get him. Now, we ended up paying $29 for him. But here's the thing I want people to think about. When you look at final stats at the end of the year, okay, do you know, Cole, off the top of your head, you may not know this, how many more fantasy points do you think Justin Jefferson had than, say, Tyreek Hill last season?
So Jefferson ended with, I think, 380, 390. He got really close to the 400 mark, which is historic. McCaffrey is one of the only players to ever do that.
Okay.
Tyreek Hill, I believe, was about 40 to 50 points shy of that.
Perfect.
So that's about a point or two a week. Granted,
it's almost, it could be almost 3 points a week.
Jefferson had bigger games. So that's the difference between the receivers, but that's the answer to your question.
Okay, so here's my point. So the way you got to think about it, it's like the point I was making about Jonathan Taylor before. I'm assuming Cooper Kupp's going to miss 2 weeks. Okay? I could be wrong, but let's assume he misses 2 weeks. If you're the Rams, knowing you only hope this whole season is that he's healthy and he has a hamstring, everybody knows in football, hamstring, you cannot rush that back. It's a recipe for disaster. So let's say he sits out 2 weeks. And can we agree that if we expect Kupp to score about 18, 20 points a week, is that too many?
If he's healthy?
Yeah.
That's too low.
Okay, so call it 20, just for the sake of argument. So now when you're drafting Cooper Kupp, assuming you agree that he's going to be out 2 weeks, you have to minus 40 points from his point total. Because if you draft a Stephon Diggs or an A.J. Brown or whatever, so now the question is, how big of a difference is there, estimate, I'm not looking for an exact number, if you take Kupp compared to that next tier, CeeDee Lamb, Diggs, A.J. Brown, guys like that, what's the point total between a healthy Kupp for a full season and those guys' difference? Probably about 40 points.
So I actually wrote about this in my blog. I said that Kupp is going, this was before he got injured. I had him as wide receiver 4. I would much rather have guys like A.J. Brown or Jalen Waddle or Garrett Wilson at their current ADP. They're going for the 9, 10, 11 back-to-back-to-back spots. I would much rather have those guys at a lower price than paying the premium for Cooper Kupp.
But wait. But I agree with you on that. That's different because I feel the exact same way. There's 3 guys to me I would. It's like the point we made about the tight ends before. Garrett Wilson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Chris Olave. I would save some money and take those if Cooper Kupp was healthy. But that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying when you drop Kupp down to the tier because he's missing those 40 points, isn't that about what people expect of the Wilson, Olave, Amon-Ra St. Brown?
It is. Not Olave, but it is.
Or Diggs, well, maybe that level?
See, the difference with that, though, is that it's not about the total points always. It's more about, for me, I value my fantasy players based on fantasy points per game because that's the most important statistic.
Okay.
So total points, say he puts up 260 total points, but he misses 2 weeks, and he's averaging 21 points a week. I'd rather have that than A.J. Brown, who's putting up 260.
No. I'm not even debating that. You're not hearing me. I'm saying that if you take those 40 points away and he's down to the next level of the Diggs or CeeDee Lamb, how much would Diggs and CeeDee, how much in an auction less would those guys go for than if Cooper Kupp was completely healthy? How many dollars less would the next tier go for after Cooper Kupp?
10, 15.
You think really that much?
I do.
Okay.
Maybe not in your...
Not 15. Not 15.
No, it is. It is. I'm 100% sure of it. I studied the values. It is at least 10, maybe 12 to 15.
Okay, I don't agree that it's more than 10. So anyway, let's call it 10 for the sake of discussion, okay? So here's the way you got to look at Cooper Kupp. If it's $10 less, by him missing the 40 points, and I get your upside comment, I'm not dismissing that, but if you lose the 40 points, now his value has dropped $10, theoretically, because the other receivers are going to be healthy for 2 weeks and compile the points and Cooper Kupp isn't. So now you say, okay, so now instead of paying 50 for Cooper Kupp, maybe I pay 40 for Cooper Kupp, okay? But then You also have to take into consideration the upside that Cooper Kupp has, mixed in with the bad offense he's on, mixed in with he's got a hamstring injury which can linger. And the only point I'm trying to make is that when you do all the math, even if you were really negative about Cooper Kupp, taking away the 40 points, bad offense, hamstring lingering, if you put it all together, he's still worth at least 35. Like at the end of the day, like his value shouldn't drop like $25 in half because if he's going to miss 2 weeks and do you see what I'm saying? That's the point I'm trying to make.
I do. I see what you're saying. I just think that
How do you quantify the value of any player when they're going to miss time in the beginning of the season? Whether it's Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Kupp, any of these guys that are hurt. Well, Taylor's different, but any of these guys you're hurt, you have to sit there and like do some math and go, how does their auction value drop or draft value drop? Because they're going to miss those weeks.
See, the thing with I agree with you, and the thing with Cooper Kupp for me is if he's my wide receiver 1, if I'm drafting after hearing the hamstring injury, I don't want him as my wide receiver 1, especially with him missing the first few weeks. If he's your wide receiver 2, that is
You're
golden.
ecstatic.
That
You're
is
ecstatic.
golden. But if he's your wide receiver 1, that's not a safe situation at all.
I agree.
And in a wide receiver 1, you want a guy like Diggs. You want a guy
I
like
agree.
Lamb. You want a guy that's really, really safe. And Cooper Kupp just isn't that for me right now.
So just to finish your point, because I totally agree with you. So if Kupp loses $10 and now it's Diggs and all those guys, I agree. Now if you draft Kupp at 40, he's still your wide receiver 1, and now you're like, I don't know. But if you can steal him for 30 to 35 as your wide receiver 2, you're ecstatic.
That's golden.
So I agree.
The next receiver I want to bring up, a little less exciting than Cooper Kupp. I'll actually bring all these guys up. I'll bring 2 of them up
Is
at once.
Juju Smith-Schuster?
You know, as exciting as he is, as with the huge overall wide receiver 1 upside, of course, I want to bring up Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson had a really rough year last year. Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett didn't do him any favors. But the year before that, he ended as wide receiver 9. Granted, Ben Roethlisberger couldn't throw the ball farther than 8 yards. Deontay Johnson could see a return to fantasy relevance this year. Top. I think I have him as 24. I could see that top 20 upside.
No, I cannot.
Why? He's a volume hog. He was last year. He was like 3rd in targets.
Yeah, well, that's not going to change because he is a target guy, but he's more of a possession guy. He's not going to get the touchdowns. This is the thing that I don't see. Could I see him in the 20 to 25 range again? Yes. I don't even know that that's a lock though with Allen Robinson there now.
Oh my God! Give me a break. Allen Robinson is the definition of washed.
Listen,
he is so bad.
Listen, I'm just saying that Deontay Johnson's never going to be a big touchdown guy. Kenny Pickett, their offense isn't really designed. There's a lot of people there fighting for targets. Najee, Jalen Warren, Pickens, Freiermuth, Deontay Johnson, Allen Robinson. There's a lot of guys. So I think Deontay Johnson, consistent, like you want a guy, maybe a step up from Marquise Brown, like maybe more of like a 14, 15 point a week guy. But I don't see more than that.
Well, if he's getting 14, 15 points a week, that's a top 20 receiver.
Maybe. That's his upside to me. I think it could be more like 12, 13, but he's just not a touchdown guy. They don't use him like that.
Are you referring to the fact that he had not 1, not 2, not 3, but 0 touchdowns last season?
He's never been a big touchdown guy. He's a possession guy.
He really is a possession guy. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right about
Yeah.
that. But I like Deontay Johnson this year. I don't love him, but I like him.
Are you partial to Cole Kmet because his name is Cole?
No, I am actually. No, I actually do like Cole Kmet. I actually think he's solid. DJ Moore. I know you like him. On my last podcast, I was not the biggest fan. He was going as the wide receiver 23 or wide receiver 20 on Fantasy Pros ADP right now. I think that's a little high for him. Does he have the top 15 upside? No question. But do you feel safe drafting him as your wide receiver too?
Borderline. I think there's two things about DJ Moore. Number one, everybody's like, well, Justin Fields can't throw, blah, 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 blah. Justin Fields has never had a receiver. Like Chase Claypool, and they tried to force Chase Claypool and stuff like that. So first of all, I think DJ Moore is going to get so many chances to be a target guy there, number one. Number two, DJ Moore has done more with less QB talent in his career This guy finds a way to score in fantasy. He finds a way already. I don't know if you saw this in the preseason. Justin Fields hit him for like a 60-yard touchdown in the preseason game.
No. I will give the credit to DJ Moore on that one. I will not give the credit to Justin Fields. It was literally a screen pass.
But you're making my point for me.
No, I am, but I'm not willing to give Justin Fields the credit on that.
DJ Moore, to me, is a reliable, consistent scorer. He may be the most underrated receiver in fantasy football. He may be. He really may.
Personally, I think the most underrated receiver in fantasy football is Calvin Ridley, if he's going
the
the
guy,
18 spot. But.
The guy I can't figure out is Amari Cooper. Now, I'm not an Amari Cooper fan. I actually like Elijah Moore to be the best receiver there this year.
Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Good God.
Yep.
What?
Oh, yeah, Elijah Moore. The Jets completely misused him.
What?
Oh, Elijah Moore's great.
Leave.
Great.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't mind Elijah Moore. I think he's okay. But you're saying that you like Elijah Moore to be better than Amari Cooper.
I think by season's end. I don't know that he'll have a better year than fantasy, but I think Deshaun Watson will use him more by season's end. A lot of mouths to feed in Cleveland, too. Peoples-Jones, Njoku, Cooper, Elijah Moore, Chubby.
I have trouble with that take.
Okay, well, you don't have to agree.
We're going to see how that pans out. We're going to come back to
Amari
this.
Cooper's a little overrated to me.
He's not. He's so good. He was great when he was on Dallas.
Please stay focused.
Sorry, I'm getting notifications that Caleb Williams in the first half, 15 for 20, 4 touchdowns.
Who cares?
It's ridiculous.
Who cares?
Sorry. DeAndre Hopkins is the last receiver I have tonight.
Okay. You don't want to talk more about Christian Kirksey?
I don't. As exciting as that is.
He may be called Kirksey. I'm going to find that out.
What
will you do if he's called Kirksey? So there's 2 Kirkseys.
I will give you a pat on the back. Say, great job,
okay.
Dad.
All right, good. I like it.
DeAndre Hopkins. I didn't like him when the season first started, and you kind of turned him around on me. He had a great year last year. He was like, I think 7 or 8 in fantasy points per game. And DeAndre Hopkins, there's nothing to say he isn't still in his prime. DeAndre Hopkins, Kyler Murray. He was an elite fantasy receiver last year. Kyler Murray is definitely better than Ryan Tannehill. There's no doubt about it. Ryan Tannehill struggled, besides A.J. Brown, a few years back, to fulfill good fantasy wide receiver
seasons. What about
seasons.
when D-Hop fumbled against the Patriots to lose them that game? Remember?
That was
Hard
awesome.
Knocks.
D-Hop has top 15 upside, in my opinion. I don't want to draft him there, but like I said with Cooper Kupp, if he's your wide receiver 3, I said Kupp was my 2, but if he's your wide receiver 3, golden. Perfect.
Okay, first of all, D-Hop absolutely does not have wide receiver upside of 15.
Why?
Because I'm looking in front of me right now at the top 15 receivers, and there's no way he's cracking that list.
I think he could be better. There's no reason he couldn't be as good as Keenan Allen.
No.
There's no reason he can't be as good as
Let me tell
T.
you why
Higgins.
he can't be as good as Keenan Allen and T. Higgins. Now I'm going to walk out of the room.
There's why.
Let me tell you why.
DeAndre Hopkins is one of the most talented receivers
There's just
in the
a
league.
minor difference. Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Ryan Tannehill.
It doesn't matter.
Oh, and there's another big piece you're missing, too. Tennessee is a run-first offense who have an inferior quarterback. There is no way D-Hop gets up to the 15 level. No way. No way.
We're gonna see about it. But
Chigo Okonkwo, on the other hand, could emerge as a top
can
tight
you please
end.
pronounce his name right? It's
Chigoziem.
Chigoziem Okonkwo.
Oh, Okonkwo. Chigoziem?
No.
Is it Chigoziem or Chigoziem?
Okay. I don't have the time.
Okay. Is it Tua Tagovailoa?
It's Tua Tagovailoa.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right.
Do you have any other guys?
I do not, Cole. I'd like to extend some appreciation for having me a guest on your podcast.
You know what? It was an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed having you on the podcast. I mean, you're wearing a Keenan Allen shirt, so I really wasn't kind of me to say that DeAndre Hopkins could be as good as Keenan Allen. I think he could be, but that's yet to be seen. We will see you on Wednesday night with TJ Horgan for a Thursday night football preview. For Mark Albin, I'm Cole Altman, and thank you for joining us on Fantasyland.